Greetings, my name is Daniel Johnson. I'm currently a technical sergeant in the United States Air Force with 18 years time in service. I'm also the associate pastor of First Baptist Church, Mexico Beach, a small Southern Baptist congregation near Tyndall Air Force Base. However, my faith background is more intertwined with the Independent Baptists, thus my endorsement is through Liberty Baptist Fellowship in Virginia, and my ordination is through Shady Grove Baptist Church near Barksdale Air Force Base. I am fully assured that God has called me to serve as an Air Force chaplain, with both the ministries of both calls to the ministry and to the Air Force having circled each other like two atoms since 2001. Thus, I have pursued each individually in turn as God has directed until He has finally brought both of them together as this new molecule in July 2021. In hindsight, I find similarity between myself and David and Joseph, both of whom God had revealed His plan to them in their teens as He did my initial ministerial call, but it wasn't until their late 30s where He finally manifested those prophecies, those initial calls that He had placed upon them. After pursuing a pastoral degree for 2 years after high school, God showed me that I had much to learn and to grow outside of not only the classroom, but outside of the Christian bubble that I had been raised in, which eventually led me back to my original plan of the Air Force for 20 years or nothing. But since I've been in the service, there's always been that question of whether God wanted me to return to that ministerial path after my 20-year career had finished. Now, whenever a fellow believer in uniform had discovered my depth of knowledge and my passion for God and His kingdom, he or she would ask if I had ever considered the chaplaincy, but I would always decline because I erroneously believed that chaplains had to compromise their faith. My personal studies during this time revealed scriptural contradictions and errors in the legalistic sect of the Baptists that I was accustomed to, and this led me to a soul search, whether or not I was even in the correct denomination due to those disagreements. Thus, I began an objective study of Scripture and the various Christian faiths, and after much prayer, study, and consideration, I eventually reaffirmed myself as a Big Tent Baptist, because they are believing they are the closest to core doctrinal tenets in Scripture. At the 13 years of service mark, I finally resumed my bachelor's degree, which God used to lead me back into religious studies, and through these courses, He restated my ministerial call in April of 2021, to which I openly surrendered. But He did not yet reveal which ministry I was supposed to enter into, and so I waited and continued to pray and listen for His guidance. During this time, He had been burdening my heart with the plights of airmen who are outside of my chain of command and the various reports of failed leadership that I had discovered. And thus I just received this ever-increasing burden for these airmen that I could not serve as a supervisor or section chief. Thus, something like first sergeant was a consideration to fulfill this burden. However, when I was once again asked in July of 2021, 3 months after my restatement of a ministerial call, was asked, "Have you considered the chaplaincy?" I then knew that God had been asking me this for years. I knew that this was why God was burdening my heart for these airmen. I knew that this was a specific ministry that He wanted me to serve in. With every new chaplain and mentor that I have encountered since then and spoken to, every chaplain course I have completed in my MDiv, and every opportunity wherein I was able to minister in a chaplain role, that fire burns greater in my soul that this is my divine mission. To minister to the young airmen and guardians, their peers, supervisors, and leaders, to help them fulfill their greatest need in the moment, in whatever form that takes, both for them and their families, which are my family as well, and thereby manifest, through my actions, the wondrous love of Christ, while proudly continuing to wear the uniform. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to review this video, and I pray that I will be hearing from you soon. Have a blessed day.